And welcome to the Daily Space Weather. We're going to get all up close and personal with it today as we've got a lively sun, so let's do some lively content here. Fantastic filaments are in this 24-hour video. There's the northern polar region. Like I said, we're going to get way up in there. There's the northeastern limb. And check out this awesome filament down toward the lower left. There's an extreme close-up of that. Next, the equatorial zoom. That is what approximately 160 sunspots looks like in SDO 171 angstroms along with SDO 193 angstroms 60-minute running difference. We've also got some splentacular filaments down there in the southeast. And if that's not close enough for you, well, stay tuned because that's closer. I almost didn't make that video right there. In retrospect, I'm glad that I did. Not half bad. What do you say? Let us know in the comments. Here's the full southern hemisphere. Here's full disk, and by the way, that is a new sunspot that just rose over the eastern limb there, south of the equator. That bright spot you see there, that is indeed a new sunspot, and it's a large one. Let's take a look at sunspots here in SDO Continuum. You see that popping up there over the southeastern limb. South of the equator. New decent-sized sunspot there. It's a bit larger than Earth. There's colorized magnetogram for today, January 8th, 2024. And let's take a brief look at what's going on in terms of earthquakes and volcanoes. First, volcanoes. There's the list. And yeah, I'm not just going to read off a list of volcanoes, but there it is. Quite a few erupting issues here at the moment. And let's talk earthquakes. So there was a major earthquake. We thought there was a very low likelihood of it creating a tsunami, so we didn't send out alerts about it. There's the past 90 days, courtesy of volcanodiscovery.com, and there's the epicenter to that quake south of Davao City, Philippines. It was a 6.7, and that is the location of that major shaken. Came in at 20:48 Universal Time this evening. These are the quakes of the past 24 hours of a 5 or greater magnitude. Indonesia had a 5.2, well to the west of where that 6.7 struck Philippines. That's it. Only 2 quakes of a 5 and greater magnitude. One was a 6.7. It was at 68 kilometers estimated depth. And how about some more space? Space. You like space? There you go. There is some more SDO imagery. Now 304 angstroms, plus the 193 angstroms 60-minute running difference. Anyway, let's take a look at stats. Space weather stats are next. And starting with the 10.7 centimeter radio flux, which is now at 176 solar flux units. If you're wondering what a solar flux unit is, it's 10,000 Janskis of radio flux density. Janskis are a measure of radiation traveling through space. I'll just leave it at that. There's the 1-year graph. Sunspot number is the red line. The 10.7 centimeter radio flux is the black line. See the key for the rest. Space Weather Enthusiast dashboard here, not forecasting any geomagnetic storms or geomagnetic unrest, although we just did recently have a minor coronal mass ejection impact. Next, let's take a look at Earth's magnetic moment from space. There we go. There's our geospace magnetosphere movie. And again, just in the past 4 hours, we had a very weak coronal mass ejection impact, which we'll get to here in a moment. It had the telltale signatures of a coronal mass ejection. The Earth remains geomagnetically calm. That's magnetohydrodynamic pressure for the past 4 hours. Here's magnetic flux density at the surface level for the past 4 hours. The ground magnetic perturbations map. So we're not expecting any major aurora here. And the ground magnetic perturbations map tends to agree. KP's 1.67 is the state of geomagnetism on a global basis. 1.67 is the planetary K index. And there's the ACE. And the CME impact happened right in here. So it didn't show up as well on the ACE as it did on the Discover. But that's that minor CME impact. Very minor. However, a little bit more extreme at the Discover. So there's the Discover. You can see much greater variations there in the plasma temperature, the solar wind velocity, the solar wind density, and also the magnetic fields, which are actually building here, but the BZ is going positive. So the BZ is the vertical component of the magnetic field. That's that red line there, and that is not looking particularly beneficial to aurora chasers. Current conditions are very diffuse for the solar wind at about 1 proton per cubic centimeter. Solar wind velocity here slightly elevated from where it was at 423 kilometers per second. GOES magnetometers are pretty smooth for quite a while here, as we've got an ongoing period of geomagnetic calm. And next, our top view ecliptic plane field plot. And guess what? There is a tug of war continuing in the western limb of the sun. So that's always interesting. The North Pole magnetism has re-won. So Earth remains in a North Pole magnetism sector. As you can see there in green, Earth's field lines remain in green. So South Pole magnetic sector here has been canceled out by North Pole winning the tug of war effectively. So here's our line of sight field plot. And you can see that blue portion, the sun's B field there, swinging back up toward the north. Earth remains in a North Pole-oriented heliosphere sector. Next, our line of sight coronal hole plot. And you should see those red, and indeed there they are. The red turning to green, the North Pole winning. So if you look down here, this is the past 4 days, by the way. Right in here, you're going to see the South Pole-oriented coronal holes turn to North Pole. There you go. So that's indicating some serious volatility over there in the lower corona. So expect fireworks. That is, more sunspots coming over there in the eastern limb. So the northern portion's more decided. So we've got quite a bit of volatility down there. Anyway, that's what's going on with coronal holes. Here are coronal holes from the SDO 211 angstroms wavelength. That is just today, so January 8th by itself. Fantastic imagery there from SDO, the Solar Dynamics Observatory, in 211 angstroms. Strong coronal hole area down there at the south heliographic polar region. And again, newly formed North Pole-oriented coronal holes here rotating in down here. So that's interesting, and let's get the sunspots, which are now down to about 158, 157, something like that. 157, I'll say, is the sunspot number. And here's our flare probability monitor and scoreboard. We still do have multiple locations where it's a significant possibility of large solar flares. I'm not going to try to break it down, but there is the there's the imagery, and I'll bring up the latest image here. Here is, so 6 and 8, which means this sunspot here, 3543, and also, I'm sorry, 5 and 8. So these two groups here, 3536 remains a magnetically complex sunspot, also 3543. So that is the area to watch here at the moment. We'll show high-res imagery of this a little later in the video. First, some more SDO imagery. Now we've got 171 angstroms, 60-minute running difference, along with the HMI continuum. And that is a fairly active sun. Let's move on to drop the 171 angstroms running difference imagery. So we've got a little bit of growth of this group up here, a little bit of growth of this group down here, and a new sunspot just rose over here. So we'll have a mild uptick in sunspot number, assuming things continue like they are right now by tomorrow. Expecting another slight uptick in sunspots, as we will have that new one near the equator counted before this group sets. And by the way, there is now a flare watch for this group as well. As it approaches the limb, it does certainly have magnetic complexity, and it has grown since yesterday. So flare watch, especially in that northwestern limb. That's my favorite spot for a large flare, folks, the northwest. Anyway, proton flux continues to diminish here, back to baseline levels, following that multi-day event. There you can see a portion of that. That was the solar New Year's celebration, which is still not reset. Anyway, background X-ray flux is a little bit higher here, still at about a C1.2, something like that. No major flares, though, only C-class intensifications, and let's check them out. There is SDO 94 plus 131 angstroms. The 131, by the way, is a 60-minute running difference. So yeah, once again, just to recap, likely places for large flares are number 3 right here, number 2 right here, and number 1 right there. So that is another 24-hour video. Not half bad, not too shabby. Next, we'd like to show a star chart, if you don't mind. I'm just kidding. I'm not asking. This is a space weather dictatorship. So there is what's going on overhead where we are in Lehigh Valley, Pennsylvania. Skyandtelescope.org is where the star chart is derived. And we've got the Big Dipper up there in the northern sky. Very useful if you want to find Polaris, by the way, as the Dipper. The stars in the end of the Dipper, they point right toward Polaris, the celestial North Pole. Anyway, here's a solar system forecast. We'll show you where heavenly bodies are today, and then we'll show you where they are in 1 week. There you go. That's where they'll be in 1 week. We will have a crescent waxing moon. And speaking of waxing, here is the waxing Venus. So, of course, Venus is phased, folks. When it is on the Earth side of the sun, it appears as a crescent Venus. And then as it moves to the opposite side of the sun, it becomes a full Venus, or a gibbous Venus. So, of course, its angular size also much bigger because it's so close to the Earth. And, yeah, so that's a 6-month series of images there, courtesy of Stephanie Gonzalez, the astronomy photo of the day. apod.nasa.gov is where to get that. And let's move on to coronal mass ejections. So here are CMEs from today. And there were a couple of events there seen popping out of the southeast. Do they have earthly directed components? Well, there's a possibility. Let's take a look at some more data here. So right around noontime, they popped out from behind the coronagraph. What does the C3 look like? Well, so far, not looking very earthly directed. Let's play this slightly more zoomed in view. So really two separate events happening there. And let's see if we can, you know what, we're not going to be able to see those on our custom coronagraphs. So we haven't looked at stereo A for a while. There's good old stereo A. And unfortunately, the difference imagery is not looking so good. Maybe the raw coronagraph's not looking so good either. What do we got? Do we have enough data? Not so much. Not so much. Not very helpful. Not very helpful there, stereo A. Let's take a look at our custom coronagraphs, which end at like 8 o'clock in the morning. So that's not helpful either. It's showing the SDO there. However, let's see if we can see what caused those CMEs. If it's on the Earth side, we should be able to see it based on the SDO imagery. So let's just zoom into that. So yeah, I'm going to say those are not earthly directed coronal mass ejections. Those must be on the far side. I don't see any berserk plasma motions that go along with those, so those appear to be far side coronal mass ejections, if I had to guess, which I certainly don't. Next, let's move to solar filaments. Yeah, solar filaments. There is Cerro Tololo Chiles, ground-based hydrogen alpha. And yeah, lots of massive filaments. That's why we started out with them up close. So here's the colorized imagery. And yeah, lots of filaments. Lots of filaments, and certainly some that could get names. So one of the ones that may have ejected might be this one here. Let's see. Yeah, that one looks like it ejected. So that's not likely to be earthly directed. We also do see a filament. Nah. One filament does move around here, but it might have collapsed. I don't know. I don't think there are any earthly directed filaments, CMEs, etc. And let's move on. Here are the past couple of hours. And things are looking pretty chill here at the moment. Let's get the bonus features. So, first the GOES 16. Charging hazards are next. We don't have them. It's clear for satellites at the moment. Electron flux here in a normal operating range, kind of on the low side. There's the 1-year graph of the relativistic electrons as measured by the GOES 16 and the GOES 18 from their near equatorial geosynchronous orbits. There's the forecast and expecting flat levels here, according to NOAA, for the next 3 days. No argument from me there. Next, we'll also show the layer where it's measured and its vibrational frequency, the F layer. That's about where it is. Here is Australian Government Bureau of Meteorology's ionosonde. Or you could call it an ionogram, which I prefer, because ionosonde is just a bad-sounding word. But whatever, ionogram. I could call it late for dinner, for all you care. Anyway, there's the anomaly in megahertz from a 30-day median, and we're not expecting to see major anomalies on here. Because why? We don't see any major geomagnetic storms happening. So that's when you see major anomalies, and we ain't got them. And then we gotta have the wham. We gotta have the wham. We gotta have wham, the wham, the wham. We gotta have the whole atmospheric model. Baby! We've got total electron content on the left and maximum usable frequency on the right, and it's hopefully not giving you the blues. Space weather. I know you're asking it to say, we thought about deleting the channel yesterday. Do you think we should? Anyway, that's what's going on in the ionosphere with total electron contents and maximum usable frequencies. We'll close out space weather with the latest intensitygram, SDO continuum, and the latest colorized magnetogram. Here's a brief look at some magnetic field. There you go. That's beta gamma class. That one down there's some beta gamma class. There's some beta gamma delta class. There's some beta gamma class. And over here we've got some, I don't know, that looks like alpha class. And down here we've got some more beta gamma class. So that's what's going on. And do we have any new sunspots rising there? And not besides that one that's larger than planet Earth. There's the full disk rock back. And let's move on to meteorology. So we've got a huge pressure gradient here in the U.S., and we've got some cold air blowing down and mixing in with hot, moist air, and that makes for a conflagration of weather, which is exactly what's happening around the Gulf states right now. So there's what's going on. This low is basically all wind roads lead to this low right now. It's sucking air in, and yeah, that's what's causing all that wind around the Gulf. That is the mean sea level pressure map. And of course, you don't have to have real high pressures when you have frigid air from Canada making its way all the way down into Mexico. So that's what's going on with pressure, and we'll cover that more here in a moment. First, the winds from around the planet. Surface winds there, jet streams here, jet streams of the central world, surface winds. Surface winds, and the jet streams. Strong and chaotic jet stream in the northern hemisphere. So here are clouds and fog for the Americas. And again, violent weather currently showing up at the Gulf states. Significant thunderstorms, damaging wind, hail, etc. And it's all associated with this low that's just making its way across the Texas stovepipe. You can see that strong counterclockwise rotation there, indicative of a northern hemisphere low-pressure system. Cold air blasting down from Canada, creating massive pressure gradients on the tail end of that. So here's our temperature from windy.com. And like I said, frigid air is blasting down, mixing in with dry, moist air, which is unable to sustain its mass, creating effectively an atmospheric waterfall, not to be confused with an atmospheric river. It's a waterfall of gas. Remember, folks, gas is fluid. Anyway, here comes our weather.gov map. Weather.gov is where to get your weather warnings, and that is the most weather warnings that we've ever covered on the channel. That is like 80% of U.S. counties are under weather warnings. So that is indeed a lot of weather warnings. Yowzers. Dag! Oh my God. All those orange areas are blizzard warnings. Also a lot of flood warnings. And anyway, there's the map, weather.gov. Go check it out yourself if you're concerned about your weather warnings. Weather.gov, the National Weather Service homepage. Here comes some fresh forecasts from tropicaltidbits.com. It's a 72-hour GFS pressure and precipitation is our first one. Should give you a great view of the snow-rain demarcation line and the intensity of the precipitation and so forth. Ta-da! Next, we'll show the total accumulated precipitation forecast, which we've been talking about for days here. Massive rains coming to now Alabama, Georgia, South Carolina, North Carolina, Virginia, the Mid-Atlantic states, and also the New England states. That's a lot of moisture making its way up toward Maine. Also, heavy rains in the Pacific Northwest. Lots of flooding on the map. That's what's causing it. 72-hour GFS total accumulated precipitation forecast in inches. Next, Accumulated positive snow depth change in inches. Same model, the GFS 72 hour. Some heavy, heavy snows there coming. Some areas expecting over 2 feet. Some areas expecting about 3 feet there in Washington. Heavy snows across the central portion of the country. Anyway, that's the forecast. Read them and weep. Or read them and be delighted like I am when snow falls. Next are sea level pressure and 10-meter wind forecast. So some additional weather is going to form in here, forming over central Mexico, and that's going to create some additional precipitation there over the Gulf states. But that's the next 3 days, 72-hour GFS mean sea level pressure and 10-meter wind forecast in knots. So the East Coast is going to get kaplastered with some major rip currents and so forth. Last but not least, the temperature anomaly forecast in degrees Celsius. 72-hour GFS model is the one we're talking about. And there you can see that anomalously cold air blasting its way all the way down to Florida and the Caribbean, the Bahamas. There it is. Once again, this is in degrees Celsius. So Pennsylvania is going to see some temperatures about 20 degrees Celsius above normal in the coming days. So very, very warm air making its way up the East Coast. By the way, if you enjoy the content, don't forget to press the like button, or we will find you based on your IP address. And then we will take over all of your devices using we'll demonically possess your devices using mind control. And we will press like for you. So it's just much easier if you just press like yourself, because we really don't want to go through all that trouble. So just press the like button. If you haven't seen our shorts, check them out. youtube.com/smashomash/shorts. Press the share button. Leave us a comment. Thanks to all of our new subscribers over on YouTube. Congratulations on realizing the channel exists. We remain surprised that you were able to circumvent the axis of evil and actually be able to realize that this channel exists. So yeah, a fine job to all of our viewers. Simply finding content is now an accomplishment, folks. Yeah, participation trophy for all who found the channel. Cheers and Happy New Year. Don't be a noob. Press the like button. Anyway, now we've got check that out. That's pretty sweet. The long wave infrared radiation map. And I don't like the way it looks. It looks choppy, so I'm skipping it. Check it out. Massive lightning storms, a series of thunderstorms here making their way across the Gulf states. That's courtesy of lightningmaps.org. And it looks like, have things calmed down here? It looks like things have calmed down. I'm not seeing any terrestrial strikes. Oh, come on. There have to still be terrestrial strikes. Are you kidding me? They just all shut down just for the video? Well, maybe maybe the lightning is watching the premiere with you. I don't know. Maybe Zeus and Thor have tuned into the premiere. That would be good. You know, because Zeus and Thor, they care about space weather, of course. Anyway, here's the system that's been kicking it up, and it's all associated with that massive low that we showed you earlier. We'll zoom out to show you the full 50-state view. Hawaii and Alaska also getting some precipitation. We'll be focusing on the lower 48 to close out our space and earth weather station. There is clouds and fog from space. And there is water vapor. A great view of a bunch of different things happening there at the same time. This dry mass of air right here, which is actually part of an upper level low, which is sort of an oddity. Dry mass of air there rotating counterclockwise. So it's not really helping it out too much to intensify it, but it is giving it a little bit of an impulse to move it up to the northeast. And that's exactly what's happening. And here is the recap, because this video is about complete. So there's US Doppler radar, vertical motion in the air column. Here is infrared radiation at 3.9 micrometers, and here is infrared radiation at 6.61 micrometers, and here is me closing out. In the meantime, until tomorrow, may that solar wind be at your back.